Welcome to the astrology forecast for August of 2024 with astrologers Justin Crockett, Elzie, and myself, Elizabeth Liz Muschett. Hi, Justin. How you doing?
Great. How are you doing this afternoon, Elizabeth?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's been a busy July, and it looks like August is going to be a busy month too. There's a lot going on astrologically and on my schedule
Definitely.
too. So,
Definitely. So I'm excited to take a look at this.
okay. So to get a hold of Justin, his website is justincrockettLZ.com and his email is justin.lz@gmail.com. And my website is alightpath.com and my email is liz@alightpath. And we always enjoy hearing from everybody. So we start the month with the sun in Leo. Leo's a fixed fire sign. The ruling planet of Leo is the sun. And the key word or the key phrase is I show or I will. I found both of those. I had only known of one, but I thought, well, I'm going to add them both in there. Leo's charismatic, charming, entertaining actor, passionate, playful, proud, about leadership, creative, joyful, and regal. And the caution is dramatic or over dramatic, bossy, domineering, and egotistical. Would you like to add anything, Justin?
No, I think you got it covered. Definitely.
So I always like to look at the chart for August 1st at 12 a.m. and we're looking at the Seattle chart and the moon is in Cancer in that second house. And so to me, I always think of the moon kind of having a flavor or a behind the scenes um, impact on over the month. So to me, Cancer is about nurturing. It's a motherly influence, caring. What would you like to say?
No, you've got that covered. You do.
And then it has a Taurus ascendant and a Capricorn midheaven, so very earthy energy for this month, maybe to help us ground some. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, I would agree. We're mainly focused on Leo during the month here, so it's going to be a good month for creativity, especially with Mars and Jupiter conjuncting in Gemini. So I like to think of this month, especially this year, as a big focus on creativity.
And this month, out of bounds, we have the moon from August 14th through the 18th and the 26th through the 31st. In Ceres, the dwarf planet or asteroid is April 2nd of 2024 until January of 2025. So the entire month, Ceres will be out of bounds. And that's when a planet exceeds the declination or latitude of 23 degrees and 27 minutes north or south.
And can I say something about that? So, and if you could bring up the slide there. Um, so really, I was going to say for folks that may not know astrology, just means that it's not going to act necessarily its normal way we would think it acts. And I thought, it was interesting. So with moon being out of bounds, it could mean that people um, are emotionally either over the top or whatever the sign the moon's in at those particular days. It's a little bit more of an excess. And then Ceres is an important one, and you've actually been looking at this one. And I mean, it's currently retrograding in Capricorn. But what are you thinking about on this one on Ceres being out of bounds?
Well, Ceres is about grief, but it's also about nurturing. So it's the higher octave of the moon, and we start the moon this month in Cancer. So then we have the moon out of bounds and Ceres out of bounds. So maybe you want more nurturing or you're not getting enough nurturing. And so, how am I nurturing others and how am I nurturing? It's like it's a two-way street, I always think.
Right. And I also like to see that, I've seen noticed in charts that, well, it could mean also, I've noticed how people feel that whether they belong to a group or don't belong to a group. And with it retrograding, it makes people, especially in their chart, will make them pull back a little bit from participating with groups, in the group think, and so they'll question about whether that particular thing is nurturing from them or not, whatever house it shows up for them in whatever, in their chart.
Well, and you could find that a group that you once really liked or enjoyed, maybe you've just outgrown it and it's time to move on, or it's
Right.
like find a new community or where you feel like you fit in.
And I feel that we dealt for such a long time with Saturn in Capricorn, that um, this to me feels a little bit like that follow up a little bit after that, because the Ceres in Capricorn and retrograding is kind of indicative where we see some issues with organizations where there's upheaval and structure of certain organizations are kind of being changed or changed right now.
Well, and
So,
people's needs are possibly changing too. So,
right,
what worked maybe isn't working so well because it's old, or it just we've
right.
shifted and grown so much it's not keeping up with this.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then we have the planets that ingress into new signs this month. On the 4th, Venus ingresses into Virgo. On the 9th, Juno, which is an asteroid, ingresses into the sign of Libra. On the 14th, Mercury backs into Leo. On the 22nd, the Sun ingresses into Virgo. On the 24th, Vesta, also an asteroid, ingresses into the sign of Virgo. And on the 29th, Venus ingresses into Libra. So she changes signs a couple of times this month.
Yeah, and I wanted to say something about, if we could just leave this slide up, sort of what so Venus, what Venus may be like in Virgo. So Venus, of course, I always think about this. I'd be curious what you think, but I mean, our kind of since we're moving into some Virgo season after this Leo season, I feel like this is kind of the period where we kind of start to um, purge, clean things up, improve things as we get into the holiday season. And I think it's really important that Venus will be in Virgo the whole month, so that's going to be some of our desires may be a little bit more discerning about certain things, with Venus going into Virgo, and of course Juno representing marriage and relationship, going into a great sign, Libra, which rules relationship. And I think the Mercury retrograde back into Leo, from Virgo back into Leo, I think is really. I always think it Venus and, I'm sorry, Mercury and Virgo, which it rules as well, is a very analytical, good time to edit communications, good time to improve communications. So, like if you're working on a book or a project, it's a good time when Mercury's in Virgo to do something with it. But the fact that it's retrograding back into Leo, I think it pulls in some. It's a good time to evaluate or edit or improve something that's creative, because of the Leo. And then the Vesta, again, I think it brings some discernment in our collective about who we're associating with, and evaluating who we're associating with, as far as Vesta and Ceres, both what they're doing.
Well, and Vesta and Virgo could be like doing a project around your house. I'm finally going to I'm going to power wash my deck soon. So that's one of the projects I wanted to get to. And Venus in Virgo, that's not her favorite sign. So her energy shifting from the Leo to the Virgo is very noticeable. So, can seem a little bit, more in your head, so to speak, than maybe
Mm-hmm.
coming from your heart.
Right.
And then planets stationing retrograde or direct this month. On the 4th, we have Mercury stationing retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo. And the Astrology Star Sisters did an episode with myself and Madam Simon. That's a good one to watch if you want more information on the Mercury retrograde. And then on the 26th, Ceres stations direct at 7 degrees of Capricorn in 29 minutes. And then on the 28th, Mercury will station direct at 21 degrees Leo in 24 minutes. And then I made a little aspect key for people. It's like if you pause your video and take a picture, you can keep it or print it out for the name of the aspect and the degrees that they are apart and what the glyph looks like. So that might be helpful to some people, or you can find it on my website, alightpath.com, under Astrology Resources. And so we get started with August 1st to the 4th. Would you like to start, Justin?
No, I'll let you start there. Let's see where you want to go with this.
So Venus in Leo is square Uranus, and Uranus is circled in red, and Venus has a little green circle around and a big red circle around. So there's like in square, so some tension there between what Venus might want and what Uranus. So I would say that expect some change, and that's not a bad thing. So
no, I think you're the one that's always saying that squares are a call for change, and this definitely is a tension effect between what are we desire, and so this could be because it is two Earth's. I'm sorry. Well, it actually. So it's important to point out here that it actually squares when it starts in Leo, but on the slide it's also at 0 degrees. Venus is at 0 degrees in this picture, so it's still squaring as it moves into Virgo. So we have this two Earth signs here, and there's a square. And so I think it's definitely, again, kind of like that Mercury. The same thing happening with Mercury going into Virgo, then it goes back to Leo. And so there's this, I think it's a good time again to evaluate our desires, especially when it comes to things we want to manifest. Especially things that come up around with money and resources here. And, we may be cleaning out the garage, Venus and Virgo, and squaring Uranus and Taurus, making something look better. And it's definitely could be the time where we have some stuff come up around income and resources with that, I think.
Well, and you might find something in the garage that you didn't remember you even had, and
right.
It might be worth something, or it could just have a sentimental value. And for those that know a little bit more about astrology, even though we're talking about the 1st through the 4th, the chart was cast for August 4th at 9:57 p.m. and that's when Mercury stations retrograde in the evening. So just so that people could know that. Okay, so we're going to have a Leo new moon on the same day at 4:13 a.m. and we'll have some slides following that coming up after this slide. And then Mercury stations retrograde, and there's an arrow pointing to the Mercury station retrograde. So Mercury retrogrades are always a good time to rework, rethink, redo, anything with in front of it. Lots of times people panic when the Mercury is going to be going retrograde, but it's not. Don't panic. Just process the information that you receive, and don't make impulse purchases if you can help it. And it's like, normally when Mercury's direct, it's like you've probably looked into, like if you're going to buy a car, you've probably looked into a few different cars and, kind of made some decision instead of just driving to the parking lot and buying the first one you see. That would not be a good choice on a Mercury retrograde, most likely. But if you've thought about it before, it's probably okay. And would you like to say anything about that?
No, you got it covered.
And then Venus in Leo is quincunx, Neptune in Pisces. So they have, a little bit of tension there too, but I always think of it, it's a challenge to make an adjustment. And lots of times the adjustments that we're being asked to make work out in a positive way. But, Neptune can be the fog, but it can be our dreams and visions. So it's like to be able to discern between the two. And then Venus, quincunx sat at 150 degrees. Okay, on what day is this? On the 4th. So Venus should be in Virgo by that day, I think, because she ingresses that day, if I remember right. Yes, she did. And so she's maybe wanting you to be practical and, discern and really think about what choices and dreams and if you're in the fog or not. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, so with the quincunxes, it's also, there's a mystery surrounding that, and a lot of times a good thing to how do you want to say, if you want to dive into deeper about the quincunx for people, because the mysteries surrounding it and the decisions, is to look at what planets are between Neptune and especially Venus are triangulating or trining. Trine can be related to what the quincunx is trying to tell us. So
Right, because it's like trying to inform us on some level. So
right. So there's association with the whatever Venus is trining at that time.
And then Venus ingresses into Virgo that day, and that's a little green circle around Venus. So the 4th is a very active day. And unless, do you have anything more to say about the site?
No.
Now we're going to go into the new moon, so we still have some more to talk about on that 4th.
Yeah.
So the new moon is at 12 degrees Leo and 34 minutes at 4:13 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And this chart is for Seattle. All the charts are for Seattle, Washington. And this is in the second house of our values and our earned income. And so, and then do you want to start with this one?
You go for it. Start.
Okay. So we have a mini grand trine. So the sun and moon are sextile, or 60 degrees from the Mars and Jupiter. And Mars and Jupiter are sextile to the North Node in Aries. And then the North Node back to the sun and moon is a trine. So it makes a closed aspect pattern, and they call it the mini grand trine. So since it's connected with that North Node, the sun and moon and Jupiter and Mars, and Jupiter is about expanding things and making it bigger, and Mars is like taking action, but they're both in the sign of Gemini, which is a lot about communication. So I would pay attention to what you hear or you read or people tell you, because it could become very useful. And these are flowing aspects to be helpful. So these planets are working together and to move us forward in some way. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to start something new. If you really look at the sun trining the North Node there, and it's a new moon, and we know Aries is about starting something new, and it's a very creative. I cannot say enough how creative this is. Jupiter conjuncting Mars and Gemini is all about communications. So it's a great time to start a podcast, start a book, publish a book, do something creative start a creative project right now. That's really what this helps with, especially on a Leo new moon.
Right. It's like, be sure that you do your new moon ceremony, whatever that is, whether it's to write 3 goals down or desires or wishes, or to light a candle and sit by yourself for 5 minutes, a little meditation. I always find it's important to do something on the new moon that's special. And it doesn't have to be at the exact time of the new moon. It could be even the day or two after, because when that sliver of moon shows, that's when I like, because to me that's like igniting that. So it's like in the dark of the moon, it's like that's when I work on what I want to manifest or bring into being.
Right.
Okay, then we have a sesquiquadrate between the sun and moon and Neptune and the midheaven. So sesquiquadrates are a square and a half, and they create tension, but it's like from that tension, I think of it as a little bit of a challenge to like push you forward, and help you to move forward. So, to me, really, really important to write down or draw something or paint something or sing a song or find a song that represents what you would like to manifest at this time, because you could probably really make it happen and like put it in motion.
Yep.
Anything else to add?
No.
Okay, then we have August 5th through the 12th. The sun is in Leo, sextile Jupiter in Gemini. So they're in a cooperative, harmonious aspect to each other. And, Jupiter is like really trying to grow and expand and move us forward with that sun. So it's like, maybe you're being a little bit more social now, or when you start writing, it's like it just flows out of you, because Gemini could be about writing. Or if you're like making a plan to teach something that that other people want to learn, it's like it's just gonna create and become easier to do. What would you like to say?
No, I wouldn't add anything. This kind of just explains what I was saying before. So I think it's just another view of that.
Okay, and then also on the 7th we have Mercury conjunct Venus in Virgo. Do you want to speak to that one?
No, just I already did that, talking a little bit earlier about Venus and Virgo. I mean, Mercury and Venus and Virgo. So again, it just highlights it's a really creative, great time, and a good time for especially with Virgo energy of editing and cleaning things up. So
Okay, and then the sun in Leo is quincunx to Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn's about the structure, and the sun is about our desires and our ego, and moving us forward. So that just feels like it's like that push sometimes to move forward. Do you have anything else to say about that?
well, again, we need to look at what planet the sun is trying to give us some insight into that quincunx. Because when there's a quincunx, then it's looking at the Saturn. I mean, this what planet that the sun is triangulating. So I definitely think that there's again, this is brings some discipline into the picture as far as our creativity and dedicating ourselves to particular projects in our life.
Okay. And Tobias and Katie in Boston send you love, Justin.
Oh, oh my goodness. Huh.
Thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have August 13th through the 17th, and we start out with a yod. Do you want to talk to that, Justin?
I'll let you start with this one.
Okay, so Mercury in Virgo is quincunx Pluto, and Pluto's in Aquarius. And then on the 15th, Mercury quincunx is Neptune in Pisces. And that's when those aspects of the quincunx are exact, but it's in aspect for several days before and several days after. And Pluto and Neptune are in a sextile, so they form a yod, or a finger of God, or a finger of fate, as different people call them. And so Neptune and Pluto are outer planets, and they're focused on Mercury. They're pointing to that energy of Mercury. And so it's like putting that tension there of and Mercury's retrograde at that time. And I hear the
Yeah.
phone in the background,
Yeah.
but we can't help that. I thought I turned it all off, but oh well. Just some extra noise in the background.
Yeah.
So, so Pluto's about the underworld, and Neptune's about our dreams and in the fogginess, and Mercury is all about communication. But it's just changed. It's at 0 degrees Virgo, so it's like at that degree, and it's just going to step back into Leo very soon. So, and it will still be an aspect then, when it'll be even tighter aspect actually
Mm-hmm.
when it
Yeah.
backs in.
Yeah.
So, and then there's no planet opposite that. Well, or is Saturn opposite? Yeah, Saturn's opposite that. So Saturn kind of informs that, wanting to bring more structure into it, but Neptune and Pluto might be, going against the grain and not wanting to bring that structure in.
Right.
But I would say it would be helpful for writing or creating, writing a book, anything, podcast, like you said.
Yeah. There is one thing in this chart I want to point out, and I almost said it a couple of slides back. But if we look at the Chiron Eris conjunction, I think this is kind of important to point out for folks of the Discord, and how it is what's that, trining the sun, correct? Yes. So I think this, when it goes, with Eris conjunct Chiron, there can be tension or discord about whether something has value at this particular point in time. And we may run into some situations with Chiron. Of course, Chiron moves faster. It's moved in alignment with Eris there, so it brings a sense of unease with if we're being valued or not. And so again, it could be a time when we really look at the value of where we're putting our creative juices at. Even though we've got a lot of creative stuff going on there with Mars conjunct Jupiter, and which is actually squaring Saturn. So there is a tension and action there as well. So it's calling for some change.
And for those of our viewers that don't know it, you and I did a Chiron series on Chiron retrograde, and we talked about the Chiron conjunct Eris, for that's following through the whole month, the whole time that Chiron's retrograde, and we'll be having more series on that too, because we just did episode 1 of the series. So
yeah, so it could be there could be more discord right at this particular point in time when we run into situations where we're not being valued because of that.
Exactly. And you talked about the Mars conjunct Jupiter, and together in Gemini, just that conjunction alone on the 14th. How, I mean, you've talked about it. I've talked about the creative flowing of energy, and whether it's to find the information you need or it comes to you, be open to receive it is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you write it down so you don't forget.
Right.
So
right,
even
absolutely.
if it comes in a dream, try to write it down. And then on the 14th, Mercury backs into Leo that day. And you talked about the trine with Chiron with the sun, and Mars and Gemini square Saturn. Oh, we talked about all of them. So we can move on to the next slide if you're ready.
Yeah, definitely.
So then we're at August 18th through the 19th. Mercury in Leo is square Uranus. So Uranus is kind of active, and Mercury's certainly active this month. The planets are pretty active. So Mercury about communication and Uranus about change. And it's in a square. So my thought would be, breathe once or twice, or count to 3, or think about it for a moment or two before you speak out, because words are always really hard to take back. But it could also change to make things move forward. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I always think that's a very positive thing. Mercury conjunct the sun and Leo. It's like the brainstorming kind of mind. It's going to come up with a lot of ideas, and the fact that it's squaring Uranus and And Taurus, it's a really great time to come up with new ideas for income. Great idea to figure out how to finance a creative project. And then, of course, it could be that where you want to take the band on the road, but you don't have the money for it because that creative Sun and Mercury is running right in the face of that Uranus and Taurus. But it's a good time to kind of think about how we are manifesting certain things in our life.
Well, and sometimes just talking about what you want to do, somebody could say, well, I'm headed that direction. I can give you a lift.
Right.
At least part of the way.
Yeah.
And then Venus in Virgo is square Jupiter in Gemini. So
I had to laugh. That just makes me laugh that way because that could be where we could our communications might be get a little bit of critical of others there, right? And that's a very in the head thinking type of thing, right? With Venus and Virgo and Jupiter and Gemini, it could be that some of our again the way we our desires, affections could be a little bit more particular about things, and just particular.
Well, and then it creates a T square with that Saturn. So, Jupiter and Venus, it's like, it can make things bigger, and Saturn's like trying to restrict what it is. and it's kind of like, no, we're not going to restrict it because we have Jupiter and Venus to like open it up and let it go. And so it's like in a constructive way, if you can do it in a constructive way, it could be very healing.
Yep.
And then we're at the Aquarius full moon on August 19th at 27 degrees of Aquarius and 15 minutes at 11:26 a.m. Pacific time. And this is the chart for Seattle with the sun and moon opposite each other.
Mm-hmm. And that's almost 2:30 Eastern time.
Yes.
In the afternoon.
And do you want to talk about the fixed Grand Cross?
I'll let you start there.
So we have a fixed Grand Cross. So the sun and moon are opposite, and Uranus and Pallas Athena are opposite. But it's hard not to include Mercury and Vesta with that sun because they're very close. Also, they're within orbs, so it adds in extra planets. So it can feel like you're being pulled in 4 different directions at once, or having maybe work's really busy and you have all these things you need to get done, and they all need to get done about the same time. But you either need to ask somebody to help you, or just prioritize which one needs to get done first and just keep working at it. What would you like to say?
Yeah, going to that Uranus Pallas opposition, it's between the two signs of course, Scorpio and Taurus. And anytime we see, for those watching, that we see planets aspecting Uranus and Taurus, it's always informing us a lot of times about our change in our resources and our values. Hence, because Taurus rules values and Uranus represents change. And when you bring in the opposite sign, which is about death and transformation, I think this is could be also a good time, because Pallas is about patterns, seeing patterns and structure, and this could be the time when we take a look and reassess our income for the fall, and reassess and think about what we have to let go of, what we have to transform, and in order to have a much healthier financial outlook, or what we're valuing at this particular point in time. So this, based on this could be the time when we make some particular, since it's a Grand Cross here, make some big decisions.
Well, and like you said, your income and your values. And then with that sun conjunct Vesta and Mercury, I'm going to say that people are talking about, downsizing or moving maybe where their kids live, or where some of their friends live, or maybe they're to the age to move into senior apartment now, or, a community of like-minded people, perhaps.
And it is a full moon. It's the apex of the cycle, so yeah.
And then that Mercury, Sun, and Vesta is in quincunx to Neptune. So that Neptune is informing that communication, and the Sun and the Vesta is about the sacred flame. But it's also, I always think of it as where you live, your home. And so I think that Neptune's asking you to, as realistically as possible, what would you want your home, or what would you want it to be? It's like, because sometimes it's like, okay, could I have a roommate that would help me, because maybe I just can't mow the yard by myself anymore and I could really use the help.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't want to exactly live by myself, or the kids have gone and my house is too big now. So anything else?
No, I think you got covered.
And then we have a mystical rectangle. You want me to go, or are you going to go?
Go for it.
Okay. So a mystical rectangle is made up of two oppositions and two sextiles and two trines that they all connect. So it's made up of a lot of aspects. And I always think of mystical rectangles as having some kind of gift within them, even though it can be somewhat of a challenge. So the sun is sextile to the ascendant, and the ascendant is trine to the moon, and the moon is sextile to Chiron, and Chiron is trine to the sun. And Chiron is opposite the ascendant, and of course the sun and moon are opposite each other. So it's like, it's always nice to have a gift or a help on some level. Would you like to add?
Well, and the last night we saw the sun was quincunx Neptune, didn't we?
Yes.
So back to when we look at quincunxes, we have to look at what trine is in the chart to inform us, or vice versa. The quincunx to inform us about that trine. And so because the sun was quincunxing Neptune, the trine with Chiron is vice versa, is forming us about that. And that quincunx with the sun and Neptune represents the collective, and the sun representing the individual. And then of course Chiron put in the mix there again, the question of value or being valued comes up into play with individuals and the collective, to where we may start to see, especially as we move into this political season, where people are not really showing respect or value for other people, no matter what their belief systems are. So I think that's really kind of important when we're talking about that sun quincunxing Neptune. We got to look at that trine that the sun is involved in.
That's very important. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Okay, then August 20th to the 23rd, the sun in Leo is quincunx to Neptune. So Neptune's been quincunxing a lot of the planets this time. And then the sun also quincunxes Pluto. And so that trine, or that finger of God, is still in motion. It just switched from Mercury to the sun now. So, we've had a finger of God or a finger of fate or a yod active in August, pretty consistently. And still the two planets informing that and working with that is the Neptune and the Pluto, and this time to the sun, of like who we are, who we want to be, or what kind of changes do I want to make at this time, or in my life, or in the next few years. Do you want to add anything to that?
Nope. I think you got that covered.
And then we have a Mars square to Venus, and that happens on the 22nd also. And so those are always interesting. It's like they can cause a little friction, but then sometimes it can create chemistry too. So it just depends on how you deal with them. And I know Justin's going to look at it a little different. And they're both ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's, I think, at the midpoint between them, actually. So the ruler at the midpoint.
Well, we already kind of talked about this, because it's been square for quite a bit. That's one of the things that in around this month is kind of important to point out, that Mars is got this square for about 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks with Venus here in the month, and I had kind of talked to it about a couple slides ago. Um, so I don't think there's really any difference in the way that you and I see that. Um, it has an aspect where Mars, anytime Mars squares a planet, you have to kind of watch how you're communicating, especially if it's in Gemini or how we're asserting ourselves. It brings some level of the fight to the thing because Mars represents aggressiveness and how we assert ourselves. And so, um, it is in the two signs that Mercury rules. And I kind of mentioned a couple of slides ago that this could involve communications and the healthy communications because it's a real mental thing here. So there's a lot of mental battle taking place right now in the collective with this, especially since it's about 3 weeks of the month. And so, and we see this as happening over the period of the Democratic convention at this particular point. So there's a lot of mental and ideas being thrown about and mental battle with this. Even though Venus is a planet of desires and affections, there's an underlying aspect of the mental with Virgo and Gemini. And so I definitely think this, remember we've talked before about when in a chart, a person has a Mars-Venus conjunction. We always say, there's sort of the somewhat traditional men are from Mars, women are from Venus, right? And so that when these two planets are conjunct in a chart, it can be a very harmonious aspect. Like that person is got this natural theme in life around relationships. But when Venus squares Mars, it's like the battle of the genders here, right? The battle of the sexes. And so it's definitely, we see this in our politics right now. You see, there's Trump, he's the Mars, and there is Kamala, the Venus, right? And so this is where we can probably see that things gonna ramp up quite a bit with this square over the next in the 3 weeks of August. But it's just sort of interesting to kind of look at that. We probably want to kind of watch how we're communicating, and we may not always show affection that Venus, and Virgo the way people expect it.
Well, and Mercury's at that midpoint in Leo, and it's trine Chiron and sextile Mars, both on the 23rd. And since it's at the midpoint between the Mars and Venus, it's almost like each of them want to get the last word and be right. So I would just caution people that nobody has to win. It can be both winners, and to not not say things that could wound, because since it's Mercury's trying that Chiron, you could really wound somebody with your words, perhaps, as a possibility.
Yeah.
Doesn't always mean that we have to, or we could learn a lesson too, because maybe the person that you think you're going to wound is going to teach you a lesson.
Yeah.
Do you have anything more to say on this slide?
No, I think I probably over communicated about that one.
I don't think so. Okay, and then on August 24th through the end of the month of the 31st, we have Mars in Gemini as sextile Chiron. And so, that just changed who Mars was making communication with, even though it was still an aspect before that, because there's always the time before that it's exact, which it's applying. So, it's like, it's almost like here, it's like if you didn't get the last word, or it's time to like try to smooth over what was said that maybe was hurtful. It's like now it's time to like tone it back and try to ask for forgiveness.
Right. Well, and that, how we a lot of times will say that a trine or a sextile represents an easy flow of energy between two planetoids, and that could either be for positive or negative. And I think it's important to point out that with Mars, the planet of that aggressiveness and action and effort, and how we're asserting ourselves, especially with communications, because it's in Gemini, how it is that sextile is so close to Eris, which is discord. and it's so I think we have to kind of think that some of that energy of Eris comes into play there with communications, discord, and again, a lot of our communications right now, I think we need to be aware of, is not healthy, showing respect for others and valuing the other person. And I think this is where this is going to show that it just is reflective of what's going on in the collective. And I think it's, for us personally, it's important to really just respect others and value others in our communications, because every human has value, no matter what their beliefs are, even no matter how ignorant, how you say that word, ignorant, or how horrible those beliefs could be. We really need to show every human value.
And then on the 26th, Ceres stations direct, and that's shown with the brown arrow. So her changing directions now, she may get more, take more action into doing what she wants to do in a nurturing way, how we grow food, how we harvest food. And it could also be about, I've been working through some of my grief while I've been retrograde, and now it's time to just move beyond that and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say anything about that?
No.
And then Venus is trine Uranus, and Venus has been very active this month and trine Uranus. So that's a nice aspect. So whatever she's been working on and doing, it's like Uranus is going to maybe help change if Venus is wanting to make some shifts and changes, whether that's in your career or maybe just cleaning out part of your house or your garage, like we were talking about earlier, just brings about a really good change that you're going to really like.
Yep. And then, I'm going to again bring in the political here, since I am doing a lot with Monday and astrology, and some of this political stuff is that it's this time when Mercury's in Leo, it's very dynamic communications. It can be very fiery communications, very performative and out there with Mercury and Leo. It's a good creative Mercury. And I think with the Mars in Gemini, again, that's a very auspicious towards creativity. This Venus opposing Neptune, I thought was interesting. Venus representing our desires, affections, how we show affection versus in the divine feminine. Again, there's a feminine aspect of Venus here, opposing Neptune, the collective. So again, it's in the two signs that represent either fantasy or truth. And I think there's going to be sort of this kind of liminal space that we could come to about what is true and what we're hearing, what is not true. And there will be a desire for, getting to the truth here. And it'll be interesting to see how Venus informs us about what is true during this time.
Exactly. And those truths coming to the surface.
Yeah.
And then Mercury stations direct on the 28th. On the 29th, Venus ingresses into the sign of Libra. So Venus really likes the sign of Libra because that's one of the signs that she rules. So she'll be a little happier. And I also wanted to say about the Venus opposite Neptune, it's like women could be like, really doing something about like to work against or stand up for what they want, and they're tired of whatever. I mean,
yeah,
fill in the blank, because there's all kinds of issues with women's issues. We have all kinds of things. So, I mean, who doesn't have an issue? Everybody has an issue, right?
I agree. And, if we put this to, I think, with it, let's see. Oh yeah. Venus is trining Uranus. This could be a really important time where women's organizations and women's issues really, are able to really bring in a lot more money into the political process, because Venus is trining Uranus and Taurus there. So that could be where there's a big financial factor either for Kamala or into women's organizations with that, and trying to move move. For example, the abortion issue is not only on the ballot in Arizona, but also in Florida. And so I think this is auspicious for those movements with Venus trining Uranus there.
So, do you have any last comments for the month of August or what people could do? Okay.
No.
Well, there's a lot going on, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, I have a quote. August is a month of abundance where the fruits of our labor are finally ripe for the picking. In Paolo from The Alchemist of 1988, and that's a book. And Justin and I both have a newsletter and a YouTube channel, so we always appreciate you subscribing and liking and commenting. Upcoming episodes that I'm doing, Justin and I do 3 episodes a month, and then the Astrology Star Sisters and I do 3 or 4 a month.
And I do want to say something about, if you could go back to that slide, about our this is our monthly forecast, but we also do the full moon. But the one that we are doing, I want to point out for folks on our Chiron asteroid series, is that Chiron being retrograded now, we are covering, and with 3 different series, this retrograde period and how it is affecting us in our individual lives, and also at a mundane level towards a collective. And during this particular time of a lot of change, it's informing us a lot. So I want to encourage people to check out our first show in this series, and we got our second one coming up, and then we'll have a third one. So just want to point that out.
Thank you. And then here's Justin, what he's doing, and I'll let him tell you about it.
Yeah, I've got some shorts and videos happening, and then also I'm part of a podcast with Michael Bartlett, who's a great astrologer out of New Mexico, and we do a podcast called The Relationship Guys, where we cover, we always take a celebrity charts or listener charts, and we give them our take on their charts as a couple.
Yeah, and those are great episodes. I've enjoyed them. And then Justin and I are part of the Archetypal Symbols team on Talk Cosmos, and we will be on August 4th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, and you can watch us live on either one of our YouTube channels or Talk Cosmos YouTube channel. And then Justin, you want to tell us about this, what you're on?
Yeah, Sue Minahan, who runs, of course, Talk Cosmos, is we're running this seasonal series on U.S. global currents and astrological perspectives. In particular, we're focusing on the U.S. elections. We just had a show last week and a half that dealt with the Republican convention, and we looked at Trump's charts and Vance's chart. And this coming up one, we'll look at Kamala Harris's astrological chart, the chart for the convention, and whoever she picks as a vice presidential candidate. We will definitely be covering it, hopefully, and to what that chart looks like and what it may mean for them as a working pair. We were looked at Trump and Vance's charts about how they interact with one another, and there were some interesting points on there. Give you a good example. There's one thing I always say: who's your daddy? So there's something about between Vance and Trump on that, and if you want to know more, you have to go and watch that show.
And is that on your YouTube channel that they can find it?
Yeah, that's on YouTube, or they can go to Talk Cosmos and they can see it at Talk Cosmos. So.
Oh, great. That's wonderful.
And I want to point out the astrologers I'm on there with. That's Sue Minahan. If you can go back to that slide.
Sure.
Yeah, that's Sue Minahan, Michael Bartlett, great astrologer out of New Mexico, and of course John Chenworthy is a great astrologer out of Seattle. And we actually had Rob Passetti, who's a really awesome astrologer out of Western Pennsylvania, who actually met Vance before. And so he's a Leo, and he brought some really great conversation to the topic. And we talked a little bit about Vance's book. And so I just wanted to point out the other astrologers on that show.
Thank you. And then again, to get a hold of Justin, his website's justincrockettelzie.com, and my website's alightpath.com. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and those that watch after we've recorded. We appreciate all of you. Please
Absolutely.
subscribe and like and send us comments. We'd love to hear from you.
And I'll say back hi to Katie and Tobias. They actually are really great. They're also spiritual workers and astrologers, and they're out of Massachusetts. So I say hi to them. Thanks for listening.
Yes, it's great for everybody that was here and all that listen later. Thank you very much. And we'll see you down the road.